learn this. Must learn this. Must learn this. Break it down. Stop. Grammar time. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. Welcome back to another Grammar Time. Today we're looking at infinitive verbs. I want to start right with the basic question here. What is a verb? Again, probably pretty easy for most of you guys to answer this, but I always like to start basic when we jump into things like this. A verb, this is going to be kind of your actions, right? You cannot build a sentence without a verb in English or Spanish, all right? This is going to tell you what is going on in any given sentence. Here are some examples: run, walk, to swim, to eat, to dance, to sing, and the list goes on and on and on, okay? So let's talk about how these work in Spanish, all right? We cannot construct a sentence without a verb, all right? That's the case for English and in Spanish. In fact, I want to demonstrate this to you. Look at this paragraph, a very simple paragraph. I've taken all the verbs out. And if we did that, this is what our language would sound like. Yesterday, I went to a restaurant where I had my friends dinner while solely about music, while they, me too, over to them. I a hamburger delicious. What? What did I just say? Right? We need those verbs in there. Yesterday, I went to a restaurant where I saw my friends eating dinner while slowly talking about music. When they saw me, they asked me to come over to them. I ate a hamburger. It was delicious, right? We need those verbs in there to construct those sentences. It's the same in Spanish. So let's talk about them. There are three types of verbs in Spanish, or at least this is how we categorize them in Spanish, okay? Into three categories. We have verbs that end in AR, we have verbs that end in ER, and we have verbs that end in IR. This is also how you can most oftentimes figure out if a word in Spanish is a verb. It's going to end in this AR, ER, IR, if it is in the base form. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Now, not always the case. There are a few other nouns that could end in some of these letters, but most of the time that is a general rule. So let's look at a few. Cantar, to sing. Correr, to run. Escribir, to write. Okay, we've got this AR, ER, and IR. So let's talk about this for a minute. We know our verbs oftentimes will use a subject. I, you, he, or she, right? When we say things like I run, or you walk, or we eat, they swim. That's great, and we're eventually going to get to that, but that is not what we're focused on today. We're focused on our infinitives. So this is going to be without a subject, all right? So maybe we should write this down, okay? When we don't use a subject with a verb, that is called the infinitive form or the base form of a verb, okay? We do use these sometimes in sentences. Let's take a look at this example. Food is needed to survive. This is an example of an infinitive verb. I'm not saying I survive or we survive. I'm just simply wanting to use the base form of it, to survive. Okay? So, going back to English for a minute, infinitives in English are pretty easy to spot as well. If you've seen this pattern, we've got this to that we use out in front, right? To run, to swim, to eat. This is kind of what makes our infinitive or our base form in English. So we replace that subject, I, you, he, or she, with just the to, right? What does that look like in Spanish? This is where it gets a little confusing because we don't use this extra word. Notice how it's already built into the verb, okay? We have cantar. That translates into to sing, okay? This preposition to is already built in here, okay? So if you want to think of it this way, these endings that we started with, AR, ER, and IR, right here, this is kind of the equivalent to that preposition in English, to, okay? So to summarize everything up here, that to, that preposition that we use in English to form the base form, is going to be the equivalent of the AR, ER, and IR, and that's also how we classify our infinitive verbs in Spanish. There are AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs, and all of these are called infinitives. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.